DaviePHD's Jargon Busters, Episode 6, Wednesday the 28th October 2020. If you watch the news, it's full of political jargon you may not fully understand. But what do all these terms really mean? And is the news really as bad as it sounds? In these videos, I'm going to bust the jargon and explain these things in terms we can all understand. Today's jargon is EVEL. Now, EVEL is not anything as exciting as having motorcycle stunt riders in Parliament. To be honest, the place is exciting enough for now, without jumping motorcycles over London buses. And they're also not engaged in any misspelled Satan worship. Okay, maybe Priti Patel is, maybe not. EVEL is an acronym for English Votes for English Laws. The EVEL process is designed to ensure that legislation that affects only England, or England and Wales, is approved by a majority of MPs representing appropriate constituencies. It also applies to legislation introducing tax measures that affect only England, or England and Wales and Northern Ireland, which must be approved by a majority of MPs representing constituencies in those areas. EVEL may also apply to a whole bill, specific clauses or schedules, Lord's amendments, statutory instruments, or specific budget resolutions. The origin of EVEL goes back as far as 1977 in the West Lothian Question. The term the West Lothian Question was coined by Enoch Powell MP in 1977 after Tam Dalyell, the Labour MP for the Scottish constituency of West Lothian, raised the matter repeatedly in the House of Commons debates on devolution. Come 1999 we actually had devolution, so after the establishment of the devolved parliaments it was raised again, as now it was not such a hypothetical issue. It concerns the question of whether MPs from Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, sitting in the Houses of Commons, should be able to vote on matters that affect only England, while MPs from England are unable to vote on matters that have been devolved to the Northern Irish Assembly, the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Parliament. By 2011, a commission on the consequences of devolution for the House of Commons was started. It published a report in 2013 which proposed various procedural changes, including a recommendation that legislation which affects only England should require the support of a majority of MPs representing English constituencies. English votes for English laws, or EVEL. Come 2015, the Conservatives won a majority in the general election. New parliamentary procedures and a legislative grant committee were enacted to bring EVEL into effect in October 2015. So how does it work? Well, two tests must be passed for EVEL to apply. The first is that the bill, or any part of the bill, must exclude at least one of the devolved governments. The second test is that the issue to be decided is within devolved legislative competence. In other words, that the devolved government could legislate, or already have, in their country on the same matter. So how is it decided that English votes for English laws process applies? Well, that's down to the Speaker. He must determine whether, in his opinion, the government bills, elements of the bills, or proposals to change the bills in the form of new clauses, new schedules or amendments need to pass through the EVEL process. The Speaker is advised by the Clerk of Legislation and Speaker's Council, who are senior members of the non-partisan House Service, and may also consult two members of the panel of chairs appointed for this purpose. So what about the Sewell Convention? Well, it is and it isn't related. It's the opposite side of the same coin. The Sewell Convention applies when the UK Parliament wants to legislate on a matter within the devolved competence of the Scottish Parliament, the National Assembly for Wales or the Northern Ireland Assembly. Under the terms of the Convention, the UK Parliament will not normally do so without the relevant devolved institution having passed a legislative consent motion, which is the same as the devolved government saying to the UK, we're okay with that. But as we've seen with the UK Internal Market Bill, Westminster can and will overrule if pushed far enough. So why do we hear about EVEL so much now? Well, to be honest, it's mainly due to the independence referendum and the rise of SNP at Westminster. While Scotland has had 59 MPs for a while, until recently the SNP were a small minority, even in that number. On the lead up to Indy Ref 1, we were in power at Holyrood, but were limited to 10 MPs at Westminster. As has been confirmed in various interviews since, David Cameron spent that evening at Downing Street with George Osborne shitting bricks, but sadly, eventually winning. Now, rather than be magnanimous in his victory, as we all know, he chose to be a bit of a dick about it.
But I have long believed that a crucial part missing from this national discussion is England. We have heard the voice of Scotland, and now the millions of voices of England must also be heard. The question of English votes for English laws, the so-called West Lothian question, requires a decisive answer.
The way he spoke, it was as if the EVEL was just a direct result of us having the temerity to have the independence referendum in the first place. But he'd been working on it since 2011. It was going to come anyway. Many felt that if he'd been more graceful in his victory, then the uppity 45% of Scots would have been more accepting of the result. But he miscalculated and paid for it in 2015. They all did. We all know the result of his next miscalculation because we're all still living through that nightmare as we speak. So does EVEL work? Well, largely, yes it does. It does what it says on the tin. It is reasonably fair and it does keep Scots' noses out of English business, and the Sewell Convention generally does the same in reverse. Are there times it doesn't work? Yes. In any vote, an MP has three options. They can vote aye in support, no in opposition, or abstain, which is considered neutral. Now, generally, there are no such things in life as choices without consequence. But when EVEL is not used, it can offer some MPs that very choice. Recently, an amendment following the publication of the Grenfell Tower fire report was voted on. As Scots fire safety regs are different, the issue is already covered in Scots law, and there were no consequentials to be awarded. Following a long-standing gentleman's agreement, SNP abstained on that vote. The Scottish Conservatives, however, did not abstain, and joined their colleagues in voting it down. If that vote had been EVEL, then the 6 Scots Tories would have been prevented from voting. In effect, the Scots Tory MPs were given a free pass to support the UK government with no consequences to the voters in their Scottish constituencies, where the result of the vote had no negative effect. So, why do Scots MPs still vote in some English bills? The reason for that is that if a bill still has an effect in Scotland, it won't be EVEL. As an example, education is 100% devolved to Scotland, and funding increases are awarded to Scotland via the Barnett formula. Scottish MPs are not permitted to vote on the minutiae of education policy in England, but they will vote on the English education funding increases, as the more the UK government gets, then the more the Scottish government gets through Barnett consequentials. So, should the school lunches controversy have been EVEL? As the devolved governments have said, they will provide said lunches. Well, firstly, regardless of all the politics and either the poor luck or in very limited cases the poor choices of parents, it should go without saying that hungry children should be fed immediately. Grown-ups can argue about the bloody bill afterwards. But in purely parliamentary terms, this vote should not have been EVEL. Whilst the free lunches would have been provided to English children, if the full Labour Party amendment was approved, it would have resulted in Barnett consequentials. So unlike the Grenfell vote, it was quite right that all Scottish MPs were entitled to vote. But just like in the Grenfell vote, the Scots Tory MPs were given a free pass, again, to support the UK government with no consequences to the voters in their Scottish constituencies, where the result of the vote had no negative effect. Perhaps it would have been more honourable for the Scots Tory MPs to have voted for the amendment, or at least abstained from it. It would have made no overall difference to the result, but it would have been consistent with the support their own constituents enjoy. I see that this policy is going to change going forward, so fair play to them. In summary, EVEL generally works as it should, and balanced against the Sewell Convention, it does keep Scots MPs out of English business and vice versa. The only real flaw is that the Speaker, though competently advised, is the sole arbiter of what is EVEL and what is not. The Grenfell vote revealed that flaw, and I hope it gets closed up soon. But what EVEL really shows is just how slow and ineffective Westminster can be. This issue first became apparent in 1977, and it took them 38 years to sort it out. The best thing we can do is leave the UK. Then, when all the other nations follow suit, every vote at Westminster can be EVEL. Well folks, that's it for EVEL, or English Votes for English Laws. If there's any other political jargon driving you nuts, let me know and I'll bust it. Otherwise, I'd ask you all to comment on the Facebook page, play nicely. Unionists are welcome here, as are their dissenting opinions, as long as they play nicely too. DaviePHD.